Good morning, you're watching A News. I'm Dilek Tuna. Here are the top stories for the hour. Donald Trump announces major deals with Qatar during the second leg of his Middle East tour. Russian President Vladimir Putin is not on a Kremlin list of officials attending the Ukraine peace talks in Turkiye. China is set to suspend export control measures for 28 US companies, easing economic tensions between the two nations. US President Donald Trump continued his Middle East tour with a landmark visit to Qatar, where the two countries signed a $200 billion aviation deal and expanded military cooperation. Our correspondent in Washington, D.C., Ubay Shahbandar, has more.
It is a presidential visit that is leaving a lasting mark. President Trump's Middle East tour continued on Wednesday, where after a meeting with the leaders of the Gulf Cooperation Council and a widely applauded joint meeting with Syria's new leader, President Trump traveled to Qatar. Qatari Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani hailed American President Trump's visit to Doha on Wednesday as, quote, historic, affirming that it marks a turning point in the strategic relationship between the two countries. Both the U.S. and Qatar signed a number of key agreements in various fields, including defense and aviation. In the aviation field, Qatar finalized a major agreement of over $200 billion to purchase jets from U.S. manufacturer Boeing. In the defense sector, the two sides signed a statement of intent on enhanced defense cooperation, as well as letters of offers and acceptance for the acquisition of the American MQ-9B drone. A joint declaration of strategic cooperation was also signed between the two countries. Earlier, the Qatari Emir said that his country is working with U.S. President Trump to promote peace. The Qatari Emir said that he is working with the U.S. to promote peace in the region as well as in other regions, such as Russia and Ukraine. President Trump's visit to Qatar is the first by an American president to the Arabian Gulf country since George W. Bush's trip to Doha in 2003. Qatar hosts the American Al Udeid base, one of America's largest military bases in the Middle East. And the White House on Wednesday announced that it had secured economic commitments worth at least $1.2 trillion from Qatar. Combined with the hundreds of billions of dollars in economic and defense deals that President Trump signed in Riyadh earlier in the week, and the announcement of the lifting of all sanctions on Syria, President Trump's Middle East trip is, without a doubt, having a significant impact on the region, while securing massive deals intended to boost the American economy. Ubay Shahbandar, Washington, D.C., A News.
The US Treasury Department announced sanctions targeting 6 individuals and 12 entities involved in helping Iran manufacture key components for its ballistic missile program on Wednesday. The sanctions focus on groups based in Iran and China that support the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in producing carbon fiber materials used for intercontinental ballistic missiles. These measures are part of President Donald Trump's maximum pressure campaign, which continues despite ongoing US-Iran nuclear talks. Iran described recent negotiations as positive, but said new US sanctions undermine the process. In related moves, the Treasury recently sanctioned more than 20 companies linked to Iranian oil shipments to China, as well as a Chinese refinery and port operators involved in Iranian oil trade. President of Iran, Masoud Pezeshkian, says that Iran will not bow to any bully. He made the comments after US President Donald Trump's criticism of Tehran during his Gulf tour on Wednesday. Trump said he was open to a deal with Iran, but added that Tehran must stop supporting terrorism, end its proxy wars, and permanently halt its nuclear ambitions. In response on state TV, Pezeshkian said Iran would not be intimidated. Fresh nuclear talks between Iran and the US ended in Oman on Sunday, with officials saying that there would be more negotiations soon. The European Union has approved the 17th sanctions package on Moscow, targeting primarily its shadow oil fleet. The European Union is also considering introducing tariffs on Ukrainian imports.
European Union ambassadors have reached agreement on the bloc's 17th package of sanctions against Russia during a meeting on Wednesday. According to Euronews, the measures blacklist nearly 200 vessels from Russia's so-called shadow fleet used to evade oil restrictions, along with 75 individuals and companies linked to Moscow's defense industry. The new package also bans the export of certain EU-made chemicals used in missile production, targets 30 companies accused of helping Russia bypass restrictions, and sanctions on more than 20 people and entities accused of spreading disinformation. The sanctions come as Western leaders, including Ukraine, France, Germany, Poland and the UK, warn of further action if Russia refuses a proposed 30-day ceasefire. The Kremlin has not responded to the offer ahead of planned talks in Turkey on Thursday. At the same time, the European Union is preparing to end special trade measures for Ukraine. According to the Financial Times, Brussels plans to sharply reduce tariff-free quotas on Ukrainian exports starting next month, reversing the emergency trade deal introduced in 2022. That temporary agreement allowed most Ukrainian goods to enter the EU duty-free, helping Kyiv's economy during wartime. But the surge of low-cost grain, poultry and sugar triggered backlash across the bloc. Farmers in Poland, France and other countries accused Ukrainian imports of driving down local prices. 2 EU diplomats told the FT that the planned transitional measures will sharply cut annual quotas for Ukrainian maize, sugar and poultry. Ukrainian officials warn the changes could slash export revenue by €3.5 billion a year. Talks to update the broader EU-Ukraine free trade deal are still ongoing, but not expected to conclude before the 6th of June deadline.
Ukraine says it was still weighing its approach to the upcoming peace summit in Turkey as uncertainty surrounds Russia's participation. The absence of key leaders, including Putin, is raising questions about the positive outcome of the negotiations.
Before leaving for Istanbul for peace talks on the war in Ukraine, the Ukrainian president said that Kyiv was awaiting confirmation of Russia's delegation to the upcoming peace talks in Turkey before deciding on the next steps. In his nightly video address, Volodymyr Zelensky called the current signals in the media unconvincing.
The answers to all the questions about this war, why it began, why it continues, all those answers are in Moscow. How this war ends depends on the world. Ukraine is ready for any format of negotiations, and we are not afraid of meetings.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is not among the names listed by the Kremlin as being due to attend, despite calls from Zelensky for him to participate. According to the Kremlin, Russia's delegation will instead be headed by presidential aide Vladimir Medinsky. Reports also indicate US President Donald Trump will not take part, though he previously suggested he might if Putin attended. Zelensky accuses Putin of continuing military strikes on Ukraine instead of seriously engaging with the peace process. He says the key obstacle to progress is Russia's unwillingness to commit to peace. The Ukrainian leader has previously stated he is ready to meet Putin face-to-face if the Russian president agrees, pledging to do everything possible to make that meeting happen.
China will pause export controls on 28 US companies for 90 days. The Chinese Ministry of Commerce announced it had stopped these companies from exporting certain products in April. But after recent talks with the US in Switzerland, both countries agreed to suspend these restrictions from the 14th of May for 3 months. The talks also led to a reduction in extra tariffs, lowering them to 10%. Earlier this year, the US raised tax hikes on Chinese goods several times, reaching as high as 145%. Beijing responded by increasing levies on American products up to 125%. US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff said that countries like Lebanon, Syria, Libya, Azerbaijan and Armenia could soon join the Abraham Accords. He cited positive reactions and progress towards resolving conflicts in these nations. Witkoff expressed confidence that more countries could join the Abraham Accords in the coming months. He said this would reflect Trump's commitment to advancing peace and stability in the region. Previously, our Andy Mioch discussed Washington's senior envoy Steve Witkoff's recent statement that Azerbaijan might be invited to join the Abraham Accords with former Mossad agent Ken Val-Lerlat. Ken shared his opinion on why Azerbaijan's invitation is so important for the region and what role Azerbaijan could play in the negotiations.
So the Abraham Accords is essential for creating peace between countries that have been at war with each other for a very long time. And it's not only for, let's say, for peace perception, but also for economical reasons that it is important and imperative to create a new region in peace and take out all the extremities that we have seen over so many years. So I think it's a wonderful initiative by the Trump administration to pursue what they have started so many years ago, to extend the Abraham Accords with Saudi Arabia, possibly Syria, Libya, Lebanon, and involving Azerbaijan is a very, very hard idea, because Azerbaijan is in a unique position to bring prosperity but also peace to the region and deal between enemies that have been facing each other for a very, very long time. So this is a great initiative. The fact actually is that the Trump administration are putting a lot of pressure on this. It's of eminent importance to make it happen actually in a very short timeline and not too long, because it's very difficult with the current situation in Gaza and Lebanon and in Syria to take a very long period of time to make this happen. I think that the timing is essential to make it happen right now.
Turkey's economic transformation is under the spotlight again, this time in London. The Treasury and Finance Minister Mehmet Şimşek addressed investors at a high-profile European Bank for Reconstruction and Development meeting, assuring the international community that Ankara's economic programme is on track despite recent global turbulence. Şimşek also touched on inflation, growth and a major shift in Turkey's long-running domestic security struggle.
Turkey's economic program is continuing with determination and delivering results. That's according to the Treasury and Finance Minister Mehmet Şimşek. Speaking at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development's annual meeting in London, Şimşek gave a detailed presentation titled Turkey's Economic Transformation and Growing Investment Potential.
It is on track, it is working, it is delivering. Look, the essence of our medium-term program, or we call it sometimes macroeconomic stabilization and reform program, the essence of it is attaining price stability. We're making good progress. Inflation is down from peak of 75% recently to about 38%. We see inflation trending down. Now, recent turbulence has raised some question marks about expectations, but financial conditions are tighter, highly likely disinflationary. Oil prices have fallen significantly. That's also significantly disinflationary, let's put it this way. So we see inflation staying on track. Growth could turn out to be slower, but we can live with that. Labor market is pretty tight. Unemployment rate is at 20-year low.
Turkey has a population of 86 million and a GDP exceeding $1.3 trillion and remains an attractive market for global investors. According to Şimşek, the national income per capita surpassed $15,000 last year. Between 2003 and 2024, the Turkish economy grew by more than 5% on average annually. In a significant development, Şimşek also commented on the recent dissolution announcement by the PKK terrorist group, a conflict that has cost Turkey an estimated $1.8 trillion over the 5 decades.
This is huge credit positive. We will no longer be wasting our energy and resources on combating terror. We will spend our energy and money on rebuilding southeast part of Turkey, eastern Turkey, where demographics is extremely favorable. It will become the new engine of Turkey's growth. But also, it will help stabilize the region. It will help us to lift the entire region, including Syria, Iraq, etc. Everybody will benefit from peace, stability, because that's the only path to prosperity.
Addressing a question on protectionist trade policies, Şimşek criticized the growing fragmentation of global trade, calling it a lose-to-lose situation. He underlined that while global trade is a key driver of economic growth, Turkey's economic momentum also relies on strong domestic demand and investment. Exports of goods account for around 20% of Turkey's GDP, while the services sector makes up another 10%.
Afghanistan is moving to boost regional trade. In Kabul, the country's transport minister met with Azerbaijan's ambassador to deepen cooperation on the Lapis Lazuli corridor, a route connecting Afghanistan to Europe. Our Tamim Bahis has more.
Afghanistan is taking another step toward regional economic integration. In Kabul, Minister of Transport and Civil Aviation Hamidullah Akhundzada met with Azerbaijani Ambassador Ilham Mammadov to discuss strengthening transit and trade cooperation. The meeting focused on expanding bilateral ties in trade and logistics, with both sides emphasizing the importance of the Lapis Lazuli corridor, a strategic trade route linking Afghanistan to Europe via Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, Georgia and Turkey. The corridor is named after the ancient Afghan gemstone Lapis Lazuli, once transported along this very path to European markets. Officials discussed ways to improve transit efficiency and reduce bureaucratic hurdles along the route. Minister Akhundzada highlighted that Azerbaijan, with its ports on the Caspian Sea, plays a vital role in connecting Afghan goods to Europe, while also gaining access to South Asian markets through Afghanistan. Ambassador Mammadov welcomed the cooperation and reaffirmed Azerbaijan's support for joint infrastructure projects that improve connectivity across the region. The two sides agreed to form working groups to follow up on technical and custom coordination. As efforts continue, the Lapis Lazuli corridor could become a cornerstone for regional trade, linking Central Asia with Europe and beyond. This is Tamim Bahis in Kabul for A News.
Georgia's parliament adopted a draft law on diplomatic service in an expedited manner. Critics see the changes being introduced as a tool of political control, while the government calls them a step toward greater professionalism. Nini Nikolashvili has the details in Tbilisi.
Changes initiated by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs introduce stricter ethical standards and evaluation mechanisms for diplomats. Under the new rules, the diplomatic staff will be required to perform their duties honestly, guided by the public interest and the general rules of ethics. The law also expands grounds for earlier dismissal if the diplomat's conduct is seen as damaging to the country's picture or contradicts Georgia's official foreign policy line. Another key change is the extension of overseas assignments from 6 months to 1 year and more frequent performance evaluation at least twice a year. The government says that these reforms will strengthen discipline and align the diplomatic corps with core state values. But the opposition parties and civil society groups warn that these reforms could be used for political control and could open the door for politically motivated purges. They claim that the vague definition of public interest and ethics could be used to sideline diplomats seen as disloyal or independent. The analysts say that these changes raises fresh questions about Georgia's diplomatic independence and its commitment to the democratic standards. With the international partners closely watching Tbilisi's political trajectory, any perception of politicizing the foreign services could further strain Georgia's global reputation, particularly with the EU and its Western allies. It's Nini Nikolashvili reporting from Tbilisi, A News.
You're up to date with world news for the hour. Stay with us on A News for more updates throughout the day.